After Harsh's tour de force on the future of the Indian economy, I want to give a perspective on what this means for India's place in the world and the external sector. But before I do that, I just want to play a clip from a 1991 film called Prahar. Some of you may have seen it. This is a movie written and directed by Nana Patekar, who's also the actor. Can we have the clip, please?
आइए बैठिए। थैंक यू। शर्ली, मेजर के लिए कॉफी बनाओ प्लीज। शर्ली नहीं है। हमने सपने में भी नहीं सोचा था कि ऐसी आजादी का मुंह देखना पड़ेगा।
क्या हुआ आज?
इस आजादी ने लूट लिया हमें।
फिर वही घिसा बेटा रिकॉर्ड। आजादी, इंडिया, कंट्री, फ्रीडम। कब तक बजाते रहोगे? सुधर जाओ बुढ़ापे में।
Shut up. You good for nothing.
हेलो।
हेलो।
और भी तो फ्रीडम फाइटर थे इनके साथ। सबने अक्ल से काम लिया, बहुत माल बना है। और ये ईमानदारी की चिंगम खाते रहे। पेट भरता है क्या उससे?
चुप रहे।
कब तक चुप रहूंगा मैं?
चलो फुट यहां से मवाली। शर्म आती है तुझे अपना बेटा बोलने में। दिन भर गुंडा लोगों के साथ मस्ती करता है, चरस पीता है।
क्या करूं? घर में बैठ के लेक्चर पीऊं तुम्हारा? अच्छा जॉब मिल रहा था दुबई में, लाखों के ढेर लगा देता। तुम्हारे पास 5,000 रुपया नहीं निकला मेरे लिए। दिल जलता है तो जबान भी जलती है। अब बताओ क्या करूं मैं?
अरे बेशर्म, दरिया में जाके डूब क्यों नहीं मरता? बैठा रहता है बाप के सिर पर रास्कल।
मैं दरिया में डूबेगा तो तुमको भी साथ ले जाएगा। फ्रीडम फाइटर बनते हैं। कंट्री के वास्ते कोई घर बर्बाद करता है अपना? हाँ? तुम जिम्मेदार हो हमारी बर्बादी के लिए। जो अपने बच्चे लोग को नहीं संभाल पाया, वो कंट्री के वास्ते क्या करेगा? क्या किया तुमने? क्या मिला तुमको? महीना 400 रुपए सरकारी भीख, और वो भीख मिलने के लिए भी पहले सरकार को तुम जिंदा हो उसका सर्टिफिकेट देना पड़ता है। फ्रीडम फाइटर।
Get out. Get lost, you stupid fool. Go away. Excuse me. नहीं पैदा होता तो अच्छा था।
कौन जिम्मेदार है? मैंने एप्लीकेशन दिया था।
The despondency, the hopelessness, the total sense of failure, where corruption is, lionized almost by this young man against his freedom fighter father. This is what we were in 1990. So remember this sort of story as you go with me through the presentation. So some years ago, Vijay Kilkar, former Foreign Secretary of India, eminent economist, had said the best foreign policy for India is 10% economic growth. And this has been the experience of Asia. And when I talk about Asia, I'll focus primarily on China and Pakistan besides India, which are 3 of the 4 most populous countries here, and are 2 neighbors with whom we have had conflicts. So this is well known. China's rise and India's rise as well in the last 20 years. But let's zoom in on the early part of that chart here. You will see that from 1980 till about 1992, the situation between the 3 countries was very different from what is there today. So China actually crossed Pakistan in GDP per capita only in 1990, which means Pakistan was a richer country than China And India, in the meantime, in that decade, was pretty much just stagnating, as Harsh said. This was the rock bottom period where our per capita income was just 1% of America. So we see that in 1980, China's rise starts, and this is when Deng Xiaoping started reforms. We didn't start reforming, obviously, till 1991, and we were behind both Pakistan and China till 1991, 1992. So economic revival was at the forefront of India's debates about what the government should do and so on since independence. This is the front page of the Hindustan Times of August 12, 1947. And you can see that they are saying India's economic regeneration is the main task. And there are different leaders talking about it, what needs to be done, what should be done, and so on and so forth. And recently I happened to be in the New India Assurance building in Mumbai. If you see there, you'll see this plaque. So when today we are talking of New India, this is something that even generations of Indians before us had as a dream. So let's read that quote. Dorab Tata, who was the founder chairman of New India Assurance, had said, "The New India constitutes the commencement of a new and large commercial undertaking for India. It is not a Bombay insurance company or a company working solely in India, but may claim to be a worldwide company." Remember, this is 1921. We are a colonized country ruled by a foreign power, but we have business leaders like Dorab Tata who are thinking global. And there are many others like him. There's Walchand, Hirachand, there were the Birlas, there were many others. So India always had business leaders who were very forward-looking, who were looking to make a mark on not just India, but the whole world. So how did we go from that rock bottom of the 1980s to the prosperity we see today in cities like Bombay? So it was, I would say, attributable primarily to these two great leaders, these two great prime ministers, and also, the opposition leader Vajpayee when Rao was the prime minister, Narasimha Rao was the prime minister. So when Narasimha Rao was driving the reforms, he got the support of the opposition. Vajpayee came and supported him in all the legislations they were looking to pass and all the policies they were looking to implement, which were very big changes for India. And obviously, we all know Atal Bihari Vajpayee's contributions towards deepening, widening reforms in India over the 6-year period that the first term of the NDA government had, he ran. So now if we compare the per capita GDP of India and Pakistan for the last 37 years. So like I had mentioned, starting in 1980 till the mid-1990s, we were actually poorer than Pakistan. So, and I've just marked out here some of the key events which have sort of punctuated our complicated, difficult relationship with our neighbor. The first one is the 1993 Mumbai blast. So India is much poorer. Then the Kargil war, we inch up in the post-reform era. Then 26/11, for the first time, India is ahead. Then the Uri attack, we have markedly gone further up. And more recently, Balakot, we are further up and to the right. So India has been pulling ahead. The sum and substance of the story is India is becoming richer, Pakistan relatively is falling behind India. If you look at this chart, this talks about the relative strength of China and Pakistan compared to India. So if in 1980, India was about 4.7 times the real GDP of Pakistan, now it is over 8 times. So consistent reforms on our side and let's say lack of reforms or a faster population growth on Pakistan's side has resulted in a situation where India is now a bigger economy, a richer country than Pakistan. Whereas with China, which had, let's say, about a 60% advantage over us in 1980, it has further escalated that advantage over the last 25 years. So this is the difference. This is the difference where, India and Pakistan, in terms of real GDP, kind of tracking each other for the longest time, but then that gap which has been opened up by India, that is the result of reforms. That is the result of immense effort by mostly 2 governments who implemented a series of reforms in a range of sectors. At the same time, we should also look at our other neighbor, which is China. So China has compounded its GDP at a rate of about 7.5% for the last 34 years, or rather over 1980 to 2014. And similarly, India compounded at a rate of 6.3%. So that 1.2% difference over 3 decades results in that. And that is very tangible, that is very meaningful. So how does this GDP difference translate to military spending? If you look at the military expenditures of both countries compared to India, you'll see that China has really pulled ahead. Now, China is second only to the US when it comes to defense spending. And Pakistan, because of its economic problems, particularly in the last 25 years, has not been there, which is why they're escalating unconventional war. They have taken, because they cannot win against India in a conventional war, they have taken the unconventional route. So Pakistan, relative to India, was spending just about 1/4 of what India was spending in 1980. Today, that conventional spend has increased to almost 6x. So India is spending almost six times as much as Pakistan today. Whereas, as I mentioned, China is far ahead of us, second only to the US. And this just tracks the trend over 1989 till 2017, where you can see where China is going, you can see where India retains its advantage over Pakistan. And the key thing to remember here about India's spending is the spending efficiency. So even though we are spending about $55 billion a year on defense, only about 1/3 is going towards capex. So as a room full of finance professionals, you understand that there's no capital expenditure. We are simply doing maintenance. We are simply doing spending on salaries, pensions, the elaborate military cantonments you see if you drive around Indian cities, maintaining all that costs money. Different kinds of defense land have to be maintained, that costs money, and that's eating up our defense budget. Which brings me to a really important subject called defense indigenization. So indigenization of defense has, for various reasons, not been successful in India. The two, if I had to really identify two reasons, they would be sort of depending too much on public sector units and corruption. So where there's corruption and where there's inefficient PSUs driving indigenization, we have not been able to get good results. And the net effect of that is today India is the world's biggest arms importer. And this is not something to be proud of. So often we find that people are almost happy about this, but they should not be. Because we have to depend on foreign powers to buy arms. We have to negotiate with them. And they don't give us the latest defense technology. So we have that pool of science, engineering talent in our country to be able to have an indigenous defense industry. And for reasons of both macroeconomics as well as India's own sort of power and not being that dependent on external countries, on external factors, we should invest in building a military industrial tech complex. And we saw the first few steps taken in this direction in the recent years. And so this headline, this picture, is when the Prime Minister inaugurated India's first private howitzer manufacturing facility, built by Larsen & Toubro. This is in Gujarat. And it's important to remember here, when we talk of corruption, corruption isn't just sort of greasing palms to get a government contract or, it doesn't just impact our lives as citizens in those minor, comparatively minor ways. It is important because if we have to have an indigenous defense industry, you cannot have corruption. So let's talk about international trade now. If you look at the trend of international trade, in 1980, Pakistan is actually far more globalized. So trade as a percentage of GDP, which is how much a country imports and exports as a percentage of its GDP, Pakistan is far more globalized and globally integrated than India or China. And this actually comes down over time. So even as the world has been sort of becoming more and more global, and the global economy has been sort of integrated, Pakistan has stayed out of it. Whereas you can see the rise of India in this chart, where from just a rock bottom number of about 14–15%, we went all the way up to like 45%. And that speaks to, again, like we are in Bangalore, the IT industry here, export of services, all of that good stuff. And this helps India in myriad ways. So when we are exporting to other countries, when we are importing their goods, India has certain leverage. India builds certain relationships with other countries, with other powers. And then we can use that when we are in a conflict situation or for our security needs. Even in terms of FDI flows, India was always punching way below its weight. So if you look at the trends from 2001 till 2007, 8, 9, we were often sort of lagging behind compared to countries of our size, economies of our size. And we are meaningfully picking up now. In fact, in the last 3 or 4 years, India has frequently been the top-ranked destination for FDI in the world. So economic growth and trade investment add to our power, add to our ability to influence other countries in ways that, which may not be immediately obvious. So when Abu Dhabi invests in a 45 billion oil refinery here, they will also deepen a strategic partnership with India. When Boeing and Airbus are competing to sell us their aircraft for our rapidly growing civil aviation sector, they will sort of also, their countries will work closely with India in matters of security, intelligence cooperation, and so on. And my favorite headline here is, if you look at the bottom there, Ratan Tata, the UK's largest private sector employer, steps down. So that was a headline in one of the major British newspapers. And just imagine, the head of an Indian company is the largest employer, a private sector employer in the UK. So this is a change which generations before us would not be able to fathom, to be honest. And this, for me, captures many of the things I'm trying to talk about. Irrespective of what you think of James Bond or Pan Bahar, the fact that an Indian company gives money to an international Hollywood star, he does an ad like this, that in itself speaks to how fast and how far India has risen. If you showed this, let's go back 20 years. Let's go back to that scene from Prahar. If you told your parents or grandparents in the 80s or 90s, one day a former James Bond, a former actor like that would do an ad like this, would anyone believe it? Probably not. So now one of the most underrated aspects of what economic growth enables is philanthropy. So this is from the annual report of the Dorab Tata Trust. They said that in one decade, from 2001 till 2010, they disbursed almost 90% of the entire disbursements in the history of the trusts. And these trusts were founded in 1892. So we are talking of a history of 120 years, 130 years. And I think as Indian businesses globalize, as India's economy increases, Indian philanthropy will globalize. And this is also a lever for India to pull when it tries to make its place in the world. Ultimately, we do find there are foreign foundations who are making lots of, doing lots of work in India, helping us in many ways, also trying to influence us in many ways. And we can do the same game, we can play the same game. So my takeaway for all of you is that past is not prologue. When you read the media commentary, when you listen to certain politicians, they will tell you, or they will try to make you believe that we are still stuck in the 80s. We are not. We've broken out of it. India is not lagging behind. India is now far ahead of that rut. We've broken out of that mess. And we should play accordingly. We should not act like we are a weak country. We should not behave in a way where someone is pushing us around and we are accepting it. There is a story that comes to my mind. After the Pokhran nuclear tests, obviously, the world was censuring us, including countries like South Africa. They were censuring us. And we were sort of not in a position to do much because we were weaker as an economy. And you will find that in the bureaucratic establishment, in the media, there are people who still have that mindset. They are still stuck in the 80s. But the facts and the reality have changed, and we need to punch accordingly. So, Harsh had spoken about how India would be a 12 trillion economy. Prime Minister Modi said in 2015, can't we dream of being a 20 trillion economy? So if Harsh's forecast holds, India would be, let's say, in a 12 trillion range by 2030 or so. And from 12 trillion to 20 trillion would be maybe another 7 or 8 years. So we are talking that in 20 years from now, which is within the working lifespan of almost everybody here, we are talking about being a 20 trillion economy. And what does that mean? That means that we have extraordinary influence in the world. We have ability to trade with countries and build partnerships with countries in ways that were just not possible in the history of the civilization. So my takeaway is that let's think big. I think India is ready for takeoff. And there is no reason to think that we cannot hit a target like this. Thank you.